The mistake. The stars were calm when the mistake was made. Out beyond the orbit of a shattered moon, the Terran hospital ship drifted in silence. Its hull was white, clean, unmarked by weapons. Bold red crosses glowed bright against the darkness of space. To every culture across the galaxy, those crosses meant the same thing: mercy, healing, and protection. No one attacked a hospital ship. It was an old rule, older than many empires, respected by even the most violent of species. But this day, the rule was broken. The alien raiders watched from the shadows of drifting wreckage. Their small ships were sharp and fast, built for ambush. To them, the Terran hospital ship looked weak. They saw no cannons, no armor, no escort fleet, only a floating sanctuary, slow and helpless, carrying wounded humans and refugees from a battle fought in a nearby system. The raiders saw opportunity. Inside their flagship, the alien commander clicked his mandibles in amusement. He told his crew that humans had grown arrogant. They thought mercy would protect them. They thought symbols would stop the hungry. He gave the order. Engines roared. The raiders moved from the shadows. Their ships glowed with blue fire as they charged. The Terran medics inside the hospital ship noticed the movement first. On the observation decks, doctors and nurses pressed against glass, watching dark shapes streak across the void. The alarm sounded, deep, heavy notes echoing through steel halls. On the bridge, Captain Elias Draven stood tall. His voice was calm, though the crew around him shook with fear. He knew what was coming. His ship was full. Hundreds of wounded soldiers in cryopods, children rescued from burning colonies, families who had lost everything. There was no room for escape, no chance to outrun. The first strike hit. The alien torpedo slammed into the side of the hospital ship. The hull shook. Lights flickered. Inside, patients screamed as the deck rumbled beneath them. The sound of tearing metal rolled through the corridors. Sirens howled. Fires broke out in the medical bays, where nurses rushed to protect their patients with bare hands. The raiders cheered. To them it was easy. They thought it would be quick, but they had made a mistake. Humanity was not like other species. They came from a death world, where survival was earned through struggle, where kindness was a choice made in the face of cruelty. Their hospital ships carried the Red Cross not just as a promise of healing, but as a warning. And now the warning had been ignored. Captain Draven gave no speech. He only gave orders. His voice was steady, sharp, cutting through the panic. The crew obeyed. With a low hum, deep within the ship, ancient systems awakened. Sections of the hull shifted, plates sliding open like hidden doors. What looked like smooth white armor revealed darker layers beneath, steel forged for war. The raiders did not notice at first. They were too busy circling, too busy laughing as they fired again and again into the ship's outer decks. They did not understand why the hospital ship had not broken apart. They did not understand why the wounded did not cry for mercy on open channels. They would learn. Inside, the Terran medics continued their work. Blood was cleaned, wounds were sealed, children were held close as explosions shook the walls. Not a single doctor dropped their tools. Not a single nurse abandoned their station. They worked as if death was only background noise. That silence, the silence of discipline, spread like a shadow. The galaxy would remember that silence. The alien commander prepared to fire again. He leaned forward, eager for the kill. But before his order could leave his throat, the space around the hospital ship lit up. From hidden ports along its sides, weapons came alive. Defense turrets unfolded with mechanical precision. Swarms of drones launched into the void, their wings glowing with blue fire. The white ship, once helpless, became something else, something built by Deathworlders who never trusted mercy to survive alone. The raiders froze. Their senses screamed warnings. They had seconds to understand their mistake, and even that was too long. The first Terran volley struck. It was not loud, not violent in the way the raiders expected. It was precise, cold, and final. Their leading ships were cut in half, split like paper under a knife. Fire spilled into the darkness, glowing like dying stars. The raiders screamed, but the human hospital ship did not answer with words. It answered with silence, with wrath disguised in mercy. On the bridge, Captain Draven did not smile. His eyes were cold, fixed on the stars beyond the glass. He knew what his enemies had failed to learn. To strike a Terran hospital ship was not bravery. It was suicide. As the raiders broke and scattered, running into the void, the truth spread across their channels. Whispers traveled faster than light. Do not touch the ships with the Red Cross. Do not anger the healers of Earth, for their mercy hides their fury, and their silence is the sound of death. The galaxy had learned many lessons about humans. They had learned about human soldiers, about human fleets, about human colonies that refused to fall. But now they would learn something deeper. Even their hospital ships were dangerous. Even mercy itself could kill, and the mistake made that day would echo forever across the stars. The silent oath. Fires were still burning inside the Terran hospital ship. Smoke curled through broken corridors, and the groans of wounded men and women echoed like a storm behind steel walls. Doctors and nurses rushed between rooms, carrying stretchers, sealing airlocks, patching wounds with shaking hands. Yet not one of them fled. Not one abandoned their post. They had made an oath, and that oath was stronger than fear. Captain Elias Draven walked the central passage, his boots heavy against the floor. He saw nurses kneeling beside children, saw surgeons with blood on their gloves, saw soldiers still strapped to beds whispering for their families. He gave no speech, no promise of safety, only the same order again and again. Hold the line, keep them alive. His voice was calm, and because it was calm, others followed. This was not the first time humanity's mercy had been tested. Long ago, during the early wars of the stars, Terran hospital ships had been attacked. Pirates, mercenaries, and desperate raiders believed mercy meant weakness. They had thought blood was easier to spill when it belonged to healers. But each time, the galaxy learned the same lesson. To wound those who heal is to awaken something terrible. The hospital ship carried no banners of war, but its design was born from war itself. Engineers had built it with quiet purpose. Every corridor was layered with reinforced steel. Every medical bay doubled as a shelter. The Red Cross was painted in radiant red, not just to signal peace, but to remind the galaxy that mercy could burn brighter than fire. Still, to the alien raiders, the truth was unknown. They believed the ship was fragile. They thought it carried nothing but kindness. They never asked what would happen if kindness was betrayed. The oath of Terran medics was simple. First, do no harm. But never allow harm to continue unchecked. That was the silent oath, the oath that every doctor, every nurse, every healer whispered when they put on their white uniforms beneath the shadow of a death-world sky. On Earth, even the healers had teeth. As the hospital ship steadied after the first assault, the oath burned like fire in the hearts of its crew. Nurses sealed bulkheads with their bare hands, ignoring sparks that scorched their skin. Surgeons continued their work as alarms screamed, stitching wounds in darkened rooms lit only by red emergency lights. Medics carried the wounded across tilting decks, stepping over ruptured pipes and broken panels. In the command deck, Captain Draven stared at the tactical screens. The raiders circled like wolves. They did not retreat after their first strike. They gathered again, weapons glowing, preparing for another pass. They wanted to finish what they had started. One of his officers asked if they should open a channel, if they should beg for mercy. Draven shook his head. No words, he said quietly. They chose this. Let them see what it means. The ship was not built to hunt. It was not built to destroy. Yet buried inside its frame were guardians, systems no alien had ever seen, systems that only awakened when mercy was broken. They were not loud. They were not flashy. They were efficient. As cold and exact as the doctors who wielded scalpels. The crew moved in silence. Panels shifted open, releasing drones the size of men, their surfaces marked with the same red cross as the ship. These were not weapons of conquest. They were defenders, guardians of the wounded. They swarmed outward with blue fire, moving with precision, their sensors locked on the raiders. The aliens hesitated. For the first time, unease rippled through their ranks. They had expected cries of fear. Instead, they saw a white ship that did not plead, a crew that did not panic, machines that moved with quiet purpose. The silence pressed on them like gravity. Back in the wards, children asked their mothers if they would die. Mothers answered with steady voices. Doctors pressed their hands against bleeding wounds and whispered, "Not today." That same whisper echoed across the ship. Not today. The alien commander spat in fury. He ordered his ships forward. Plasma beams cut across the darkness, burning toward the hospital ship. But the drones moved faster. Shields snapped into place. Turrets awoke from hidden ports. With the precision of surgeons, they cut down the attackers. One by one, the raiders burst into flames, their screams scattering across open comms. Through it all, the hospital ship did not boast. It did not shout. It worked. It healed. It endured. When the first wave of raiders broke and fled, the galaxy took notice. Whisper networks carried the story. Merchants spoke of it at starports. Soldiers murmured about it in trenches. Diplomats repeated it in secret halls. The tale of a hospital ship that bled but did not break. A ship that carried mercy in one hand and justice in the other. And in every retelling, one detail was remembered most. The silence. The ship had not begged. The crew had not pleaded. Humanity had answered betrayal with stillness so cold it froze the hearts of its enemies. That silence became a legend, and from it, the galaxy learned what it had ignored for too long. Humans were death-worlders, and even their healers carried the spirit of survival. The silent oath was now known beyond Earth. To harm those who healed under the Red Cross was to call down the fury of a world that had never known mercy from nature, and the galaxy would never forget it. The wrath of mercy, the void outside burned with fire and wreckage. Alien ships spun broken in the dark, their hulls cracked open, spilling fragments like sparks across the stars. The Terran hospital ship, though wounded, still stood in silence. Its white hull was scarred, but the red crosses glowed brighter than ever, illuminated by the fire of fallen enemies. The second wave of raiders hesitated. They circled, their formation breaking as fear took root. They had come expecting an easy kill, an unguarded prize. Instead, they found something else, something that looked like mercy, but struck with the hand of death. On the bridge of the hospital ship, Captain Draven gave no sign of relief. His eyes moved from screen to screen, watching the swarm of defense drones orbiting his ship like a steel halo. His officers waited for orders, but none were needed. The oath had been broken. The ship knew what to do. Deep inside the ship, more systems activated, hidden compartments opened, revealing weapons never meant for conquest. They were not grand cannons or planet killers. They were precise, cold. Tools of defense shaped with surgical care. Each strike was like the cut of a scalpel, swift and exact. The raiders screamed across open channels. Their commander bellowed for them to charge again. He could not retreat now, not without shame. He ordered his ships forward, their engines roaring with fury. They fired all at once. Beams of green and blue streaked across the darkness, hammering the hospital ship's shields. Sparks danced along its hull. Decks shook. Nurses stumbled as ceiling panels fell in showers of sparks. Still, the medics did not stop. A surgeon stitched a wound even as the room trembled. A nurse held a child while walls groaned under pressure. Another medic pressed his body against a fractured window, buying seconds while the emergency shutters slid shut. They did not fear death, for their duty was greater than fear. Outside, the drones answered the attack. They moved like a storm of steel, breaking formation and rushing toward the raiders. Their weapons hummed with cold precision, beams of light cutting into alien hulls. The first raider ship exploded in silence, its crew gone before they could cry out. Another tried to flee, but a drone pierced its engines, leaving it adrift, lifeless. The alien commander cursed, his mandibles clashing in rage. He ordered his flagship to ram the hospital ship, to crush it under sheer weight. His vessel, larger than the rest, surged forward, glowing with fire. On the bridge, Captain Draven whispered one word: "Release." The hospital ship obeyed. From its underbelly, long shapes fell into the void. They looked harmless at first, metal cylinders, smooth and dull. But as they drifted, they unfolded like mechanical flowers. Their centers glowed with red light, and arcs of electricity spread across their frames. When the flagship came close, the weapons activated. A net of energy surged outward, faster than thought. It wrapped the alien ship in a cage of red fire. Engines sputtered, shields collapsed. The raiders screamed as systems failed, their screens filling with static. They were trapped, helpless in the dark. The drones swarmed, circling the crippled flagship like vultures. But they did not finish the kill. They waited, silent, as if allowing the enemy to see their fate before it arrived. Inside the hospital ship, the wounded continued to breathe, saved by the hands of men and women who refused to abandon them. The medics did not look outside, did not watch the battle. Their world was blood, bandages, and whispered prayers. The wrath was not theirs to give. The ship itself carried the wrath for them. The alien flagship cracked. Fire bloomed along its sides, spilling into the void. Still, the hospital ship remained silent. No taunts, no threats, only the glowing crosses watching coldly from the dark. At last, the alien commander broke. His voice, once full of rage, cracked with fear. He begged for retreat. He called his surviving ships back. Their formations shattered. They scattered into the night, leaving their dead behind. The hospital ship did not chase, it did not pursue. Mercy was its oath, and vengeance was not its purpose. Yet the message was clear. Those who broke the oath of peace would not live to break it again. On every channel, across every comms relay, the story spread. Witnesses repeated it again and again, how a Terran hospital ship had turned an ambush into a massacre, how the Red Cross had become a symbol not just of mercy, but of terror. And, in every retelling, one phrase echoed like thunder: "Never strike a Terran hospital ship." The wrath of mercy had been shown, and the galaxy would never forget it. The lesson, the battle was over, but the silence that followed was louder than war. Broken ships drifted like corpses in the void, their fires fading into darkness. The Terran hospital ship floated steady, its hull scarred, its crosses still glowing red. To the crew inside, there was no victory, only survival. Yet outside, across the stars, the story was already spreading. The first whispers came from the fleeing raiders. Their comms were filled with fear, voices trembling as they reported what they had seen. They spoke of a hospital ship that did not die, of drones that cut through steel, of defenses hidden behind mercy. They swore that the Red Cross was no longer a symbol of peace. It was a warning, a threat painted across the void. When the raiders limped back to their territories, their words spread like infection. Smugglers repeated it in shadowy bars. Traders carried it on long routes, whispering to anyone who would listen. Mercenaries passed it to their employers with caution in their eyes. The legend of the hospital ship traveled faster than light, faster than truth, because fear moves quicker than fact. In the great halls of alien governments, leaders debated the tale. Some dismissed it as lies born from shame. They said humans could not turn mercy into a weapon. Others stayed quiet, because in their memories was proof, old battles, old scars, when humanity had done the impossible before. Meanwhile, inside the hospital ship, life continued. Doctors stitched wounds, nurses carried water, engineers welded broken decks back together. No one spoke of glory. They saved who they could and buried who they could not. To them, the oath mattered more than vengeance. But even as they worked, they knew their silence would speak louder than words. A week later, a convoy of neutral ships arrived to recover survivors from the battlefield. They saw the wreckage, the ruins of the raiders, and the white hospital ship floating in calm stillness among the dead. The captains did not ask questions. They recorded what they saw, and their reports were sent across every star system. The galaxy now had proof. For centuries, there had been rules of war. Even in the darkest conflicts, hospital ships were safe. They were untouchable, sacred ground in the void. But now the galaxy knew what happened when the rules were broken against humans. They did not cry out. They did not beg for help. They answered with silence and steel. And so the lesson was carved deep. Never strike a Terran hospital ship. In the following months, stories grew larger than truth. Some claimed the hospital ship had destroyed an entire fleet alone. Others said its crosses glowed like fire and blinded enemies before their deaths. A few whispered that the ship carried the spirits of Earth's dead, guardians who punished any who harmed the healers. The legends twisted, but the heart of it remained. Humanity's mercy was never weakness. Alien commanders began to change their orders. Pirates were warned to avoid Terran routes. Soldiers whispered in barracks that to see the Red Cross in the dark was to see death coming. And in time, even the bravest captains refused to attack medical ships marked by humans. The most fearful change was not in enemies but in allies. Other species who once thought humans reckless began to watch them with quiet unease. If even their doctors could wield such wrath, what did that say about the soldiers who stood behind them? What did that say about the world that had shaped them? In one council chamber, an elder from a distant empire spoke words that others would remember for centuries. The humans do not raise their weapons first. They raise their hands to heal. But if you force them, those same hands will close into fists strong enough to shatter stars. And that, my brothers, is why we fear them. Back aboard the hospital ship, Captain Elias Draven stood at the viewing glass. His reflection was hard, his eyes shadowed. Around him, the crew worked quietly, still saving lives. He did not care for the stories outside. He cared only for the oath that bound them all, to heal no matter the cost. But even he knew the truth now. The galaxy had seen what mercy could become when betrayed. And that truth would spread farther than any wound he could stitch closed. The lesson had been written in fire and silence. And the galaxy would never forget it. The fear the stars never forget. Months after the attack, the Terran hospital ship still drifted from system to system, carrying the wounded, rescuing refugees, and delivering aid where no one else dared to go. Its hull was patched, its scars visible, but the red crosses shone as bright as the day they were painted. To those who looked upon it with gratitude, it was a symbol of life. To those who remembered the battle, it was something else entirely. The fear spread quietly. It moved through smugglers' ports, into mercenary barracks, through the quiet whispers of traders, and even into the polished chambers of alien councils. Captains warned their crews, admirals changed their maps. The order was clear across species. Never fire upon a Terran hospital ship. Stories twisted into something more than truth. Some swore the ship had called down fire from the stars themselves. Others claimed it carried hidden fleets waiting to unfold like wings of steel. A few whispered that the healers were not human at all, but spirits of Earth who had taken shape in the void. None of it mattered. Fear did not need facts to live, and still the ship healed. Inside its walls, nurses rocked children to sleep. Doctors operated through exhaustion, and engineers walked the corridors, sealing cracks and replacing plates. They were weary, but they were unbroken. They never spoke of vengeance. They never spoke of glory. They worked as they always had, quietly and without demand for thanks. But the galaxy was watching, and the silence of their duty only made the legend stronger. One night, in a war zone far from Earth, another alien fleet spotted the white shape gliding across the stars. It moved slowly, a giant against the void, its engines humming like the heartbeat of a giant. The red crosses gleamed against the black. The alien commander froze. His ships outnumbered the hospital vessel 10-1. By every law of war, it should have been an easy victory, but none dared move. His crew whispered warnings, their voices tight. They had heard the stories, felt the weight of rumor. No one wanted to be the one to test if the legends were true. The commander tried to give the order, his throat dry, his hand shaking above the console. But when his eyes met the glow of the crosses, his courage drained away. He gave a different order. Stand down. Do not fire. The hospital ship passed in silence. Its engines pulsed, carrying it deeper into the void. It did not even acknowledge the fleet around it. It simply went on, carrying the wounded in its halls. But to the alien commander and every crewman aboard his ships, that silence was heavier than any threat. They swore they felt the eyes of death on them as it passed. From that day on, no one questioned the rule. Even the most lawless raiders turned their ships aside at the sight of red crosses. Even the hungriest pirates chose easier prey. To strike a Terran hospital ship was not only a crime, it was suicide. In time, the galaxy's nav maps bore quiet markers, invisible to the untrained. A symbol of a red cross meant a sector where no weapon was raised. Where Terran mercy ships traveled, even war itself paused. On Earth, children grew up hearing the stories. They whispered them as bedtime tales, half proud, half afraid. On distant alien worlds, parents used the same stories as warnings. Do not anger the humans, for even their healers are forged from fire. The legend had become law, and that law carried no council, no treaty, no vote. It was written in silence, in scars, in the fear that now spread through the stars. Captain Elias Draven stood once more at the bridge window, watching the void ahead. His reflection stared back at him, older now, harder. Around him, the crew continued their quiet work. He knew the galaxy feared them. He knew whispers carried his ship's name like a curse. But he felt no pride in it, only a cold truth. Mercy had always been a choice. Humanity had chosen it in a universe that offered little kindness. But when that choice was betrayed, when mercy was broken, even the most patient healer could become wrath. The crosses glowed brighter as the ship moved on, carrying the wounded, carrying the truth carved into every star system it passed. And in every shadowed corner of the galaxy, the same words were spoken. Never out loud, but always with dread. Fear the ships of war, yes, but fear even more the ships of mercy. For when they come, they do not ask. They do not warn. They only remind you of your mistake.